Uh-oh, somebody got fatally attracted. You've been fatally attracted. Hey gang, I'm trying something a little bit different today, and I am doing a review slash reaction slash whatever you want to call it to the latest episode of X-Men 97, Tolerance is Extinction Part 2. So I literally just watched it. In the future, I might try and write down some notes. I didn't. I just watched it, and you're going to get my reactions raw. It's going to be so raw. So this is a continuation of the previous episode, Extinction is Tolerance Part 1. Probably should have started with that one, but we're starting with this one, so we're going to roll on ahead. In the previous installment, Bastion, the human sentinel hybrid with a crazy complicated backstory, launched other human sentinel hybrids to attack all the mutants in the world, and then Magneto was freed, and he used his electromagnetic abilities to I screw up the poles of the planet or some such, and that caused all the Sentinels to shut down. And this ended with the line that people have been saying on the internet, and they said it in the episode, which is Magneto is right. And I feel obliged to remind everybody, if you didn't watch the original show or you didn't catch up before the season started, the last episode of the original show, the original X-Men, the animated series, that this show is a continuation of, Magneto is assembling a mutant army to take over the planet and wipe out humanity. And so when the audience is watching this show, and then this show itself, when it says Magneto is right, I have to take pause and be like, right about what? Because I would think the implication would be, yeah, Magneto's right. He needs to wipe out humanity before humanity wipes out mutants. And I have notes. I have notes on that. And I can't believe I need to say this in the 21st century. But genocide is bad. But, I was going to do a tweet about it, and I was like, wait, because I feel like I know what the show is doing, which is, you're trying to lay the grounds for Magneto's argument, but then the X-Men are going to have to unite and fight him to save the day. And that is sort of what we get here. We get a classic callback to the 90s X-Men comics where there was a blue team and a gold team. And we get an even further callback where they're wearing costumes from earlier eras. In fact, at this point, you throw a Shadow Cat in there and a Colossus, and you've got the team and a Dazzler, and you've got the team from that 80s pilot that never materialized into a show. If you watched Mutant Academy, Sal and I discussed the Pride of the X-Men pilot that was supposed to launch the X-Men animated series, and it sort of did, just not in the way they intended. It went through some different iterations and ended up being the show that we know, but that version was more of a iteration of the 80s team, and we get a lot of those costumes here. So we get Gold Team is going after Bastion, and we got a Blue Team going after Magneto, and we get characters like Rogue and Sunspot that end up joining Magneto, who are like, that's okay, wipe out all of humanity, I don't care. So we have one more episode left, so I don't know how the show is going to end, but I feel like I see the work that has been done here, which is to get to this moment where you as an audience member can watch and be like, I understand Magneto's perspective. We've seen Genosha, we've seen all the hardships, we've done the homages to his time in the Holocaust. We know the pain and the trauma that causes this. And of course, that's what I think a lot of your audience is reacting to when they say stuff like Magneto is right. I think where they've kind of dropped the ball is there's been very little tangible work done to do the counter argument that, maybe wiping out all of humanity isn't the answer. And it's weird that I have to explain this because you watching this are humans. Mutants don't exist. They're fake. So if Magneto was real, he'd murder you. He would be out to kill you. But to that point, pretty much every human we've met on this show is a bigoted stooge on some level, including Captain America. He's probably the best human character they've interacted with on the show, and even he's kind of completely impotent. So in this final conflict where Professor X is confronting Magneto, he's right. He is correct. He's like, listen, guy, wiping out, because it's not just wiping out all the humans on the planet. For sci-fi reasons, basically, Magneto, again, he messed with the polarities, so now the planet is dying or something. The show clearly doesn't care, so I'm not going to care either. The point is, there's a ticking clock, and it's not just all of humanity that will die. It is all of the mutants that don't join Magneto, which is all of them except two, it seems. We don't see any other mutants on Asteroid M. It's literally like, Magneto's like, it's me and Rogue and Sunspot, and we're good to go. And so even though Magneto is obviously wrong here, the show hasn't done any legwork to make Professor's argument seem like the correct call. It doesn't put any weight behind it. We haven't met a single human character that we have any empathy for on this show to be like, oh, wow, that person died. And we've got cameos of Spider-Man and stuff like that. But I think the show would have benefited by spending time with Moira McTaggart, although, spoilers for the comics, we might be building to a situation in this show where she's a mutant as well. Point is, pick a human character that isn't a murder bot, that isn't a president that's only out to benefit themselves, that isn't have their hands tied to help people, that is truly a good person. So that when Professor X is there saying, hey, don't wipe out humanity, we can be like, yeah, I don't know why we need this, but we need it, gang. We need it. Audiences need it. We need to be like, yeah, genocide is bad. Magneto's not right. It's funny to me how often, like, anytime Alan Moore or some other comic writer is like, hey, superheroes are inherently fascist, all social media flips out like, how dare you? And then they'll turn around and be like, you know what? Thanos is right. Magneto is right. That genocide guy, that guy that wants to wipe out thousands of people, he's got a point. Oh my God, it's exhausting. Anyway, so this all builds to probably my favorite moment in the episode, because I have not liked Magneto all season. He's bitchy, he's sassy, he's a pain in the ass. Let's not forget that in the Genosha episode, when we are supposed to like Magneto, he goes to a much younger woman, Rogue, and coerces her to be his bride to create peace with him. He's like, they want me to be a ruler, which would create peace for our kind, but I'm only going to do it if you get with me. That sucks. That Magneto sucks, gang. He is a villain. He's a villain. He's a bad guy. He's a tragic villain. That's the power of the character. He's a tragic villain, but he is a villain. Builds to my favorite moment of the episode, where Wolverine does what Wolverine does best. Wolverine's been kind of sidelined this whole show, and I think that's a smart decision because he's the most popular character. He's going to get his time to shine. We know it. But he gets this moment where he cuts through all of it, and he's like, screw you, Magneto, and he stabs him through the back with his claws because he's like, we need to cut this stuff out, literally. And that brings us to one of the most iconic moments in X-Men comics, which is the Fatal Attractions moment, where Magneto uses his magnetic powers to rip out the adamantium from Wolverine's body. We even get a slow-mo shot that homages that cover. And I don't know where we go from here. I do know, so we've got this moment where Professor X uses his psychic powers to try and take over Magneto. This feels like the equivalent moment of this in Fatal Attractions is what leads to Onslaught, who I wouldn't say is necessarily an iconic X-Men villain. I mean, I like him because I grew up in the 90s. So to me, Onslaught was like the scariest thing ever. Your mileage may vary depending on which decade you were reading X-Men comics. We will see where we end up in the final episode. I imagine what's going to happen is we're going to do one last plea to Magneto, and he's going to help us defeat Bastion and maybe die in the process, or we're going to pretend he died in the process. Considering how quickly the show's burned through plot lines, for all I know, we could do Onslaught next episode. That could be the whole thing. Like, everybody has to team up. We have to team up with Bastion to fight Onslaught. Who knows? We've done a little bit of work to humanize Bastion. I'm hoping this show is smart enough to know we need to end on a note that is definitively genocide is bad. Magneto is wrong. Magneto is just as wrong as Bastion. Because the truth is, Magneto and Bastion have more in common than I think they'd like to admit, and I'd like to see the show acknowledge that. So anyway, those are my thoughts on this episode of X-Men 97. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't like. If you like this sort of thing, we'll be back next week for the finale of this season. So I will see you then. Bye, everybody.